Hey folks, so I got the CBE Hybrid Engage single pin sight. I really wanted a sight that was a single pin because my eyes aren't great and all those extra pins in there were really kind of blurring my vision. So I decided on this one specifically because it was a single pin sight, but also because there were toolless adjustments for windage and for distance. Basically you unhook a little latch and then use a little lever to turn the knob so you can go from your different heights and also to adjust windages on the fly, which is something that was really important for me. Now sighting it in was okay. It was pretty easy to get the distances. The problem is actually putting the sight tape on the sight itself, and I'll kind of talk you through that. So a lot of people on the internet are talking about this, and I'm not sure why, but they're recommending sighting in at all different yardages. And realistically, the instructions for the sight itself say to sight it in at 30 and 60 yards. So basically you go to whatever range you have and sight it in at a 30-yard distance and a 60-yard distance. I kind of went a little overboard just because I'm kind of OCD that way. And what you can see here is you can see the highlighted orange areas, and then there's a blue line in there. So basically I did 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards, 50 yards, and 60 yards. The 60 yard is way down here, and the 30 yard is one of those. So once you get this done, and it took me about 2 to 3 weeks because I was really, again, OCD about it and kind of trying different yardages, and finally I ended up with this sight tape. Now what you're then supposed to do is you're supposed to measure the distance between 30 and 60. So I did it with a caliper like this, which is basically on this side of the caliper. I measured the distances between that. And again, you don't have to do that. You can just use the included measuring distance. So you get this red kind of measurer in your kit when you get the CBE, and you'll see it says 30, and then there's a bunch of numbers on either side of that. And basically what that does is you take your caliper or however you want to measure, and you put one end on 30 and the other on 11. So basically you do 30, and you can see, basically it's kind of hard for me to do this and show you at the same time, but you can see that my number aligns at the 30 and it goes to about the number 11. You get a bag full of these different slides, and they have numbers on them on the bottom there. So this one's the 13 and the 14, and I found 11. What I did is I put the numbers kind of next to each other to see if they line up. And one thing you're going to notice immediately is that my 20-yard line, which is there, goes way up to there. And that's where this kind of gets a little bit head scratching, because it should kind of line up like this, right? But it doesn't, and I'm going to show you why, and I'm going to show you how to kind of verify that once you put this on your bow, because realistically there is no instruction on how to do that. It basically says to screw this tape in, and you're going to see the problem as soon as I showed you. Now before I did all this, I set my needle on the sight to 30 yards, and I'm going to show you why that's important. You don't have to do it at 30 yards, I just kind of did it at that number. The other thing too is some of the numbers are a little bit off, so I'm going to verify all that at the range when I go tomorrow, but hang on for a minute and I'm going to show you what's up. All right, so if you see now, first before I show you what I mean to show you, these screws up here that hold the sight tape on, those are 4-40 by 3/16 inch screws. That's actually the only screw size on the instruction manual that they don't tell you. I actually got with the company, with CBE. They were actually really nice because I lost one of the screws, and they actually sent me a pair of screws, but you can get screws like that at Granger and whatnot. So now if you look, if you see where the needle is, you'll see it's not at 30 yards. And I had put it at 30 yards on the sight tape I drew on. And this is where I was kind of confounded. I was like, okay, what do I do now? Because nowhere in the instructions did it say. And I only found one YouTube that actually discussed this. Now if you turn this around a little bit, now you can see that there's a slider here, okay? Now again, it kind of might seem like a dumb moment for people who have done this a lot in the past, but this is my first bow and this is my first sight. So basically, when you look at it this way, you'll see that the needle's like somewhere around 45 or 44 yards. So now what you have to do is you have to loosen this screw and move your needle here to go up to 30 yards. This is not in any of the instructions anywhere that I was able to find. I found one YouTube video that talked about this. So basically, you have to know that this is what you have to move once you get your sight tape on, so you know exactly where your yardage is. Very confusing. I was kind of scratching my head about this for a good while until I saw that one YouTube video. So I'm just going to adjust this a little bit and show you what it looks like when it's done. So now you can see that once I moved that slider, the needle is at 30 yards. So this should be now set up with the appropriate yardage for the sight tape. As you can see, now the needle's moved up to 30 yards, so this should be adjusted appropriately for my yardage. I am going to go to the range tomorrow and practice and check the different yardages, as when I put this sight tape next to the one I drew on, the 40 and the 50 yards were a little bit off, so I'll kind of see where I'm at with that. You can see now that you have to adjust this slider to move your needle to the appropriate yardage once you do this. Again, it was something that I had not seen on any YouTube other than one after I spent about 2 hours looking, and this is nowhere in any of the instructions provided by the company. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this video on how to properly sight in your CBE Engage Hybrid Single Pin sight. If you have any questions, put them down below and I'll try to do my best to answer them. Hopefully tomorrow I'll take some footage of me practicing.